If the bodily resurrection of believers is going to happen in the future, when Christ returns, what happens to Christians who die now? We've all been to funerals of loved ones who are believers. We see their body and we wonder what has happened to their soul. And a lot of churches have taken different approaches to this question. Some churches believe in soul sleep, so that when somebody dies, their soul is basically sleeping until Christ returns. They go outside of time. Many Catholic churches believe in purgatory, that the soul goes to purgatory until all of their sin is burned off or not, and they either go to heaven or hell. John Calvin, in this chapter on resurrection, examines all of the places of Scripture that talk about what happens to believers after they die. So this is what Calvin writes. Scripture, which compares the body to a hut, from which it says, "We depart when we die." For in this respect it considers that we differ from brute beasts. Thus Peter, near death, says the time has come to put off his tent, 2 Peter 1. But Paul, speaking of believers, after having said, "When our earthly house is destroyed, we have a building in the heavens," 2 Corinthians 5, adds that we are away from the Lord as long as we remain in the body. But we long for the presence of God in the absence of the body. If souls did not outlive bodies, what is that has God present when it is separated from the body? The apostle banishes doubt when he teaches that we have been gathered to the spirits of just men, Hebrews 12. By these words he means that we are in fellowship with the holy patriarchs, who, although dead, cultivate the same godliness as we, so that we cannot be members of Christ unless we unite ourselves with him. And if our souls, when divested of their bodies, did not still retain their essence and have capacity of blessed glory, Christ would not have said to the thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise," Luke 23. Relying on such clear testimonies, in dying let us not hesitate, after Christ's example, to entrust our souls to God, or, after Stephen's example, to commit them into Christ's keeping, Acts 7, who is called with good reason their faithful shepherd and bishop, 1 Peter 2. So Calvin is saying that when believers pass away, we must entrust their souls to God, that they will be with Christ in paradise, with all of the believers from all time. I've shared this story with the Anchor Squad, but I fully believe my Grandma Dee, who was a Christian, she read the Bible all the time, she prayed for us all the time, she was in church choir, she loved the Lord, and she wanted her kids and grandkids to also follow God. She passed away a few years ago, and I really believe I saw her body at the funeral, but that her soul is now with Christ in heaven, rejoicing in paradise. And that one day, when the bodily resurrection happens, she will be given a new body, and I will recognize her as my Grandma Dee, as we rejoice in the Lord. And I think this is very comforting for us, because when people pass away that we know, who are Christians, we entrust them to God. We know that they will be rejoicing with the Lord, with the church from all time, for all eternity, and that we will see them and will recognize them again. I think that gives Christians the right perspective on death that a lot of non-Christians, a lot of Americans don't have, because a lot of Americans are afraid to think about death or to talk about it. But we have complete trust that God will bring us to him when we pass away.